Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for Mozu, Transcending the Limits of Legacy E-Commerce Solutions. My name is Matt. Thanks so much for attending today. Just to let you know, we'll get started with a few more people coming in about 60 seconds. All right, great. Thanks, everybody, for the wait. We're really excited to have you on board with us today. Today we'll be talking about e-commerce solutions and the difference between legacy solutions and what new technology can provide to you, along with a lot of the challenges that people are currently facing when it comes to making a decision like that. Just to kick things off, my name is Matt Wynn. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Volusion Inc., and I'll be kind of guiding you through today's presentation. But the meat of it will be coming from Jason Wallis, who's Volusion Inc.'s Chief Technologist and VP of Architecture. We're also lucky to be joined by Jim Bernardo, who's the Channel Development Director at Avalara, which is a valued Mozu partner. So all introductions aside, let's dive into what we'll be covering in today's presentation. Now, we'll get started with Jason, who will be walking you through the history of e-commerce, more importantly, how e-commerce has evolved over the years and how that's kind of changed the game for enterprise players in today's market. Along the same lines, we'll introduce various challenges and opportunities for the enterprise business, lots of good stuff in there. Thirdly, we'll take things over to Jim, who will give you some explanation on enterprise sales tax automation, both challenges and opportunities that are specific to the Avalara tool. And finally, we'll put Mr. Jason Wallis through the ringer with any questions and comments that you do have. So without further ado, Jason, would love for you to get started and tell us a little bit more about the evolution of e-commerce.
Thanks a lot, Matt. For that, welcome everybody today. I think it's important as we talk about the challenges and the opportunities that retailers face today that we put that in context of where e-commerce has come from and the dynamics that are at play in the market right now. When you think about the very beginnings of commerce, really it got kicked off in the early 90s as the internet became more commercialized. And at that time, vendors and retailers were really trying to solve the basic problem of publishing product catalogs online, managing pricing effectively, accepting payments, dealing with multiple browser support and the browser standards back in the day. And then as the platforms matured and as online businesses matured, mid to late 90s, we started hearing more about personalization and how we could market more effectively to the unique shopper that was interacting with a website and try to understand more about their needs and behaviors. That is still something that a lot of retailers still have a lot of emphasis on today. There was a big pivot point that happened really in the 2000s with the adoption of the modern mobile smartphone platform. And that really happened in June of 2007 with the launch of the iPhone 1, followed about a year later by the HTC Dream, which brought us the modern Android operating system. And the change that shoppers have undergone and really pushed on retailers because of the adoption of those platforms was not understood at the time, but it's been very, very dramatic. When a shopper has the full power of a web browser and a modern computing platform in the palm of their hand, now we're not only dealing with a new set of form factors and screen sizes and gestures to optimize for, but it really pushed the channel of multi-channel, pushed the limits of what multi-channel was. What retailers were seeing as the challenges in managing a multi-channel business in this world. And as shoppers became more mobile and began to surf those channels on the go, being able to interact with a retailer, showroom in a store, that mobile push, turned multi-channel into an omni-channel explosion, and to the point now where shoppers don't really recognize brands at all, and it's stressed a lot of the systems that are in play today. When you look at the very successful platforms that are out there historically, you'll see a lot of them were built before this mobile revolution that really has changed the landscape for so many retailers. Intershopperly was the first big vendor available in 1992. That actually grew into Demandware in 2005. ATG and WebSphere both launched in 1999. And Magento hit the ground right around that 2007 mark. But all those platforms, really built before that mobile pivot point happened in the market. And it really have left retailers kind of struggling with a platform that wasn't built to solve that problem trying to operationalize that and make the platforms work has become a real challenge. So that's what we see that Mozu it was a need for this limitless commerce experience kind of emerged in the marketplace to try to solve that problem. In terms of challenges, really the first challenge that retailers face today is the sudden proliferation of mobile purchases. And I distinguish this from just pure mobile shopping. Mobile shopping has been around for many years, but what started out as a shop and browse on a smart device or a tablet and then complete the purchase on the desktop, really in the last year, we've seen quite a big uptick in full purchases being completed on the mobile platforms. And you see that, according to statistics out there from, Gartners and Forresters of the world that do quite a bit of analysis, 56% of smartphone owners and 76% of tablet owners use their device to shop online. That is not going to be decreasing anytime soon. This is a reality that the marketplace has dealt retailers. They have to solve for this desktop and this mobile optimized shopping experience. Mozu, in rising to this challenge, really has been built from the ground up to support the problems of managing a mobile optimized and a desktop experience, or even a native mobile shopping experience. So built into the very core of the platform is this strong support for responsive design. Responsive design is a front-end development technique and design pattern that makes it much more efficient for a retailer to manage a mobile optimized and a desktop optimized experience without having to have two separate and distinct code bases. And I can't underscore strongly enough how important this is, so that, because the ongoing burden of maintenance is reduced dramatically with a responsive design. In addition, Mozu has very strong API support, mobile APIs, with built-in native mobile SDKs, so iOS and Android SDKs, allowing you to rapidly build native experiences for shoppers or for staff inside the retailer as well. Also, because of this layered approach and the awareness that Mozu has had of the changes in interaction paradigms, it's a layered technology. So we can anticipate and adapt as new interaction modes come on. We're already seeing right now with a lot of buzz and discussion about wearables. They're in their infancy, but it's highly likely that in the next year or so we're going to see wearable use increase, and fully expect to see shopping and purchasing begin to happen on those wearable platforms. Gesture-based communication with the likes of Connect, etc., are also on the rise, and you see some fits and starts of gesture-based arising. So the Mozu platform really has those kinds of new and interaction paradigms in its sights, and is ready to adapt to those as they come online for shoppers. Next challenge is really about providing an omni-channel shopping experience. And fundamentally what this means is consumers and shoppers don't acknowledge channels in the same way that retailers acknowledge channels. Channels are an invention for retailers to more effectively manage their business. Dips all the way back into the supply chain, inventory, and into those consumer touch points. But consumers see brands, and shoppers want to interact with the brand and be empowered with the information that they need to make an optimized shopping experience or a fulfillment choice. So, for example, if I'm interacting with a retailer that has an online presence and a brick and mortar storefront, I need to have the information about inventory and delivery times to be able to make a decision about whether I want to pick up an item in store or have it shipped directly to my home, or be able to search for the availability in several stores in a given area and see where the product is, so I can make a decision about fulfillment. Additionally, I need to have access to all of my purchase and interaction history, really in either of those channels, for facilitating returns or rewards programs, etc. So shoppers really expect and now demand that they have access to inventory information, interaction and order and transaction information, and not have this divided wall between these channel experiences. In order to solve this problem, once again, Mozu really provides a holistic view of the customer, of product, inventory, can integrate in with existing systems to provide a view into that inventory and service them on a mobile experience, on a desktop experience, in store, wherever a retailer wants to surface that information. It's made available to the shoppers. Additionally, there's a unified catalog and content management system built directly into the Mozu platform. So managing a digital experience, be an in-store kiosk or traditional PIM information, product information, pricing, merchandising, digital assets such as imagery, textual descriptions, etc., all can be managed in one central location and then published out to the appropriate endpoint where the customer is going to interact. So a real optimized mechanism for managing that centralized inventory, but then having the ability to override and tailor at the touch points where shoppers are interacting with retailers. Third challenge that we see today is because of this rapid rise of consumer technology among shoppers, many retailers feel like they're just left flat-footed no matter where they turn, and have ended up building a patchwork of systems that have become very expensive to maintain. So if your commerce platform today does not provide out-of-the-box responsive support or strong native mobile APIs, you've probably had to resort to a transcoder or some other technology to basically add additional tags into your desktop traditional site to generate a mobile optimized experience. This is, oftentimes it slows down the development process. It limits what you can do in terms of shaping the experience and having distinctive experiences on the mobile platform and desktop platform. And it's just a great example of one of many that we hear repeatedly from retailers where they're trying to build, integrate new systems into platforms that really weren't built to solve the problems that they're facing today. And it's leaving them, and after investment, still feeling like they haven't been able to catch up with where the shoppers are headed. The Mozu platform takes a completely different tact to this problem. One, having strong native support for the key challenges that retailers are facing today automatically makes it less awkward to use the platform. I'm not having to bend it into solving a use case that it really wasn't built initially to solve for. But in addition, it's an exceptionally open platform. So when we went about building the Mozu commerce platform, we first built this extremely robust API. And then on top of that API, we've built the administrative tool sets, the storefront experience. All of the application portion of Mozu that you see itself is built on an API. Now we've then made that same API available to third-party developers. So be those developers from a retailer has their own IT staff, or solution partners or technology partners. And that openness really allows for a tremendous degree of customization, extensions, tuning the platform to the unique needs of the retailer's business, or additionally allowing retailers to integrate in best-of-breed technologies if there's a particular technology they've made strong investments in that they'd like to bring into their commerce experience. That openness allows for that with the addition of, and on top of the REST API, we've released several open source SDKs that allow for developers to work in technologies that they're comfortable with and most productive in. This really leads to that rapid ability to innovate, allowing for change to happen quickly and let retailers stay on top of their platform. There's a great example of that today, which is why we have Jim Bernardo from Avalara on the phone with us. And that was, the Mozu team recognized early on that the complexities of tax calculation in the U.S. or in other geographies really was an area that required a specialized technology, the best-of-breed solution. So we leveraged that open API and brought a great partner, Avalara, in to provide that capability for us. So I'd really like to hand it over to Jim Bernardo from Avalara to kind of give us some insight into the Avalara platform, kind of the integration, the functionality that it provides at this time.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, this is Jim Bernardo from Avalara. So, like Jason was talking about with the Mozu software, the Avalara suite of tax compliance software has been built on top of an API, and that made it very easy to actually integrate the Avalara software with the Mozu platform. And in a couple of slides, Jason will actually talk about what that experience was like from the Mozu side. So the Avalara software is a complete suite of end-to-end compliance software for tax. Everything from address validation using geolocation software all the way down to a rooftop, which, as we'll see in a minute, is actually very important in a lot of places, to sourcing rules and product taxability rules. The software can also manage the life cycle of exemption certificates for those customers that you may have who, for whatever reason, are exempt from collection of sales tax on purchases that they make from you. And we can also do, calculating returns and putting them together and doing filing for you to all the appropriate jurisdictions according to the schedules that are required in each of the jurisdictions in which you do business. So why is this all important? Well, the problem is that doing sales tax accurately and properly is really hard. In North America alone, there are over 11,000 distinct tax jurisdictions. There are over 100,000 taxability rules. Things like in New York, if you buy a piece of clothing that costs less than $110, it's not taxable. But if it's over $110, it is. Things like if you buy a candy bar in the state of Washington that contains flour, flour is considered to be an ingredient in food, and therefore that candy bar is not taxable. But a candy bar which does not contain flour is taxable. Things like tax holidays. A number of states every year, usually around the beginning of the school year, will do a sales tax holiday where back-to-school supplies, clothing, and so on are exempt from the collection of tax. So, there's just a fair bit of complexity in the tax system overall, and it gets even more complicated because states and municipalities and cities and counties are changing rules on rates and boundaries and taxability rules and so on every year. In 2013 alone, we logged more than 7,000 changes to rates, rules, and boundaries across the U.S. And then, as a business, vending or selling to customers in multiple states, you have to be worried about where you have nexus. And nexus used to be defined fairly simply as a physical connection to a state that allowed that state to force you to follow its laws. But states have been changing those rules dramatically over time to being things like if you have a click-through affiliate relationship in New York State, you are therefore considered to have nexus in the state and must collect sales tax. In some states, if you have people who attend trade shows for more than 15 days total in the course of a year, you're considered to have nexus and therefore required to collect sales tax. So there's quite a lot of complexity, and trying to keep up with it manually and manage all of it manually is virtually impossible. Now, a lot of merchants will try and use zip codes to calculate the amount of sales tax that they need to collect from a customer. And zip codes, frankly, are a very blunt tool for doing sales tax. They weren't designed for sales tax. They were designed for delivering the mail, quite honestly. And in a lot of states, in this example, Colorado, in my own state of Washington, zip codes just don't help because sometimes two locations within a same zip code can be subject to very different rates on tax. So in this example, we have an address in Denver, in Colorado, and the amount of sales tax to be collected there is about 4.5%. And you can see the things that comprise that tax. And, if we actually move to another address just a half a dozen buildings down the street, the sales tax rate is much higher because there are additional components to the sales tax that are imposed on that particular location. So in states like Colorado and states like Washington, the tax can be comprised of a number of different things. First of all, obviously you have the state statutes, and then sometimes counties will impose a different tax, and then a city or a town can impose an additional rate on top of that. In this example we're using in Colorado, there's actually an assessment for supporting the football team. There are things that are added on top, a transit tax, and so on and so forth, all of which contribute to, a fair bit of variability in the amount of tax that is owed from one location to another. So, if we look on the map at a bunch of different addresses, all within relative proximity to one another, the tax can vary widely, everywhere from 4% to, over 8%. And so being aware of the variability in sales tax rates and product taxability and so on is supremely important. So to sort of sum up briefly the ideas behind tax, first of all, compliance. Sales tax compliance is an ever-changing landscape. Rates, rules, boundaries change sometimes multiple times within a year within the same state. So from your perspective as a vendor, from your perspective as a merchant who is selling products or services to customers, being accurate and making sure that you're keeping very close track of your records are super critical if you want to be able to survive a sales tax audit. And those things will happen. Trying to keep up with all of these changes, 7,000 changes in rates, rules, and boundaries in the course of a year is, trying to do it manually is for all practical purposes impossible. And doing it manually will fail. Eventually you're going to miss something or you're going to do something inaccurately. And when you make a mistake, that mistake can have real financial implications for the viability of your business. When an auditor comes in from a state to look at your transactions, they don't just look at 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 transactions in the course of 1 year. Most states have look-back periods that range from 3 to 5 years, or in some states, if you've been previously audited, the statute will allow the look back to essentially be, indeterminate. So if they want to look back 10 years or 15 years, or for the entire length of time that you've been in business, they can do that. And so, having accurate records, being accurate about how you actually calculate and collect and remit the tax is supremely important. You can substantially shift the odds of surviving a sales tax audit relatively unscathed by taking advantage of, sales tax automation and e-commerce automation, and so, taking advantage of the partnership and the integration between Mozu and Avalara. There are a couple of things that we always suggest that merchants do to attempt to limit their audit exposure. First of all, do a nexus study. Find, if you have an accountant or a firm that you work with, or, frankly, if you're an Avalara customer, this is a service that we will offer, do a nexus study. Understand across all of the states in which you do business where you have nexus by the rules and the laws in those particular states. Stay up to date with rate, rule, and boundary changes. Easiest way to do that is to let somebody else do it. In other words, let Avalara do that work for you. We have, hundreds of tax experts and former state auditors and so on staff who are constantly updating the tax content that runs behind our software. Report consumers' use tax. Always be compliant. Do it from the very beginning of your business and never stop being compliant, because, you are required by the states in which you do business to be accurate about how you do tax. And that burden is on you. You are acting as an agent of the state, whether you want to do that or not, in every transaction with your customers. Easiest way to make sure that you're being compliant, to make sure that you're operating with the most recent up-to-date information, to make sure that you're being accurate in how you calculate and collect and remit sales tax, is to automate that entire process in much the same way that you automate payroll. Most of you, probably all of you, do not do your own manual payroll calculations, because trying to do that is fraught with inaccuracy, prone to error, And it's really not an activity that adds value to the business. It is a cost of doing business. In the same way, automating sales tax is not something that adds value to your business, adds money to the bottom line. It is a cost of doing business and something which you're required to do. And so it's just so much better if you can automate that process and not have to worry about the possibility of errors. Make sure you know your filing requirements. Filing requirements vary from state to state, from municipality to municipality. Some states require you to file monthly, some quarterly, some once a year. You need to know what those requirements are and follow them. Calculate addresses accurately using geospatial mapping, as I showed you. Zip codes are simply too blunt an instrument for trying to do that. And being able to calculate down to the rooftop and know from one address to a different address down the street what the differences are in the taxability is really important. Understand product taxability. Again, if you automate the sales tax compliance process, that's something you don't really need to worry about. But again, from state to state, there are sometimes some very arcane rules about product taxability. In the state of Kansas, if you run a Christmas tree farm and you purchase a forklift specifically for lifting and moving Christmas trees, that purchase is tax exempt. If you use that forklift for any other purpose, that purchase is taxable. Again, a very arcane rule, but one that's important to understand. Keep comprehensive records, and again, if you automate the process, those records are automatically kept for you, because when you are audited, you will be required to produce certain documents and records of your business for the auditor. I've talked about auditors a couple of times. It's important to note that states like California and Idaho of all places, are hiring more and more auditors every year. Last year, California hired 100 auditors. Idaho, which you might not think of as a mecca of e-commerce, hired 45 sales tax auditors, and they're doing that because going after uncollected sales tax is relatively low-hanging fruit for them in a time when budget shortfalls are really important issues across the states. So keep comprehensive records, automate certificate management. Keeping track of which of your customers are exempt from the collection of sales tax and for which purchases. Trying to do that manually, again, is just going to create problems for you. And in fact, when you are audited by a state, the very first thing that an auditor is going to look at, because it is the easiest place to find errors, is transactions where you collected no tax, and they will ask you to produce valid certificates for those transactions. And they won't look at every one of them. They'll look at a representative sample, and they will calculate, based on what they find in that representative sample, a percentage of your total transactions where they believe you didn't properly collect tax, and they will apply that percentage across all of your transactions for all of the years during the look-back period and assume that you owe a certain amount of tax based on that applied percentage. And again, in an instance like that where they find a failure on your part to handle exemption certificates properly, they won't simply collect the uncollected tax. They will also assess fines, penalties, and interest. So a simple mistake on a $100 or $1,000 purchase can end up costing you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines and penalties and interest. So it pays, as always, to pay attention and make sure that you are being as accurate as possible, and doing that in an automated solution in the cloud with a bunch of experts sitting behind it that's well integrated with your e-commerce platform, as the Avalara software is with Mozu, is just a way of, it's strategic to your business, and it's a way of ensuring that you handle things that could otherwise really come back and bite you. So let me turn it back to Jason, and Jason is going to talk to you a little bit about how what Mozu's experience was doing the integration between Avalara and the Mozu platform. Jason?
Yeah, as Jim mentioned, there's, the integration time frame that we're talking about here was pretty dramatic in terms of just how quickly we were able to couple these two platforms through the APIs. In less than an hour, we had the basic communication wired up and running, and then really it was a 2-week process, end to end, from the sort of design okay, now we understand how things hook up, how we're going to get them to communicate back and forth for the live tax calculations, as well as the sort of offline synchronization processes to keep everything up to date, all the way into the certification process. That was a 2-week cycle. So the nice thing is that two open platforms with strong SDKs really, as demonstrated here, we can move the needle very quickly in providing, powerful best-of-breed experiences for retailers. This integration really is free to all the Mozu customers that have an Avalara subscription. So the nice thing is you can have the peace of mind that all of the tax calculations are taken care of, and focus on innovating on the other portions of your business instead of staying up at night trying to keep up to date with the ever-changing tax landscape. And really, in terms of additional challenges that we still see retailers struggling with today, this issue of outdated platforms that don't seem to be the right fit, limiting innovation comes up repeatedly when we talk to retailers and analysts and folks in industry. This dramatic change that we've discussed a little bit, in the past 7 to 8 years that's gone on in the industry has left a lot of people still feeling flat-footed, and most retailers feel encumbered by their current platform. It's not able to allow them to move as fast as the ideas that they can come up with and ways to attack the market. And the more money that's spent on these initiatives on the legacy platforms, those projects typically end up being more expensive than they anticipated up front, and also falling short of goals because they've had to reduce scope and compromise on the features that they need to bring to their platform. So the real frustrating portion of this is I don't think anybody that is looking at the industry sees the pace of change slowing down amongst shoppers and their behavior as they adopt new technologies. So it's really imperative that this cycle is broken of retailers having to spend more than they want and achieve less results on a platform that isn't moving the needle for them. I think the other sort of last portion of that is these organizational boundaries that tend to grow up around platforms. As the industry changes, those organizational boundaries don't make sense either. And this just becomes another friction in the works that keeps retailers from innovating on their platform as fast as they could. Solution for that is this modern multi-tenant SaaS platform. And the interesting thing is, in times of rapid change, when innovation is demanded and needed, like we're in now, SaaS really is the best software delivery model for that for several reasons. One, on-premise software typically involves a very large upfront capital expenditure. So I need to buy the license upfront and go through an extremely costly implementation cycle. So I have to make big bets on what I'm going to need when I get, before I start the project in terms of expenditure. The second thing is those implementation times are typically very long for on-premise software, and the cycle between upgrades is even longer. So if you imagine that many on-prem solutions have a 12 to 18 month development cycle, well, the industry is changing so fast right now that the features that a platform needs to implement 12 to 18 months before they actually release that new feature of software might not be the thing that's really needed in the marketplace at that point in time 18 months later. Factor into that another 6 to 9 month implementation cycle for one of those upgrades, and you're already over 2 years out from when the functionality was first introduced and began to be developed in the platform. So those cycles lead to a lot of lag in the system that slows down that innovation. The other thing is that from an IT standpoint, for retailers' IT expertise, they'd much rather focus that expertise on the unique aspects of their business and allow them to innovate on their business, and not dealing with the having to manage and run an on-premise platform. It's not a good use of time and resources when those resources are so precious and so few. I think additionally, when you think about SaaS overall, there's really a couple of different SaaS models. The traditional SaaS model, and what's been around for many years, is a model that punishes success with revenue share. So revenue share is a way to loosely track success on a platform, but it doesn't correlate to cost of delivery, and it also builds some kind of perverse disincentives in the system for merchants that want to increase conversion. Traditionally, also, there's been a lack of the ability to customize and change the experience. So you end up with these two choices. I can go for a costly, large upfront project for an on-premise solution that I can customize, or I can go for a SaaS solution where I get punished for rev share, and I don't have the ability to customize it quite so much. The SaaS that Mozu provides, we call Smarter SaaS, and that SaaS really is all around the ability to foster this innovation and provide a fair usage-based pricing model, and not one that punishes for success through a rev share model. In addition, because it's true multi-tenant SaaS, we've had to build a lot of the automation needed to run this multi-tenant environment, and that means that activities such as creating a new site are fully automated activities. You don't have to call Mozu to create a new site. You don't have to contact someone in IT to twiddle some bits on a server somewhere to make a site show up. It's a feature built natively into the platform, and it's an automated portion of the platform. So a lot of the mundane routine tasks are just handled by the automation. Additionally, we provide an unlimited number of sandbox development environments to allow retailers to experiment and find the right experience they want to provide to shoppers that's best for their business. That's just out of the box on the Mozu platform. Keeping with the innovation theme is this feeling that many retailers have of falling further and further behind, and there's a vicious risk aversion cycle that is very easy to fall into. And when I become risk averse, I rely on the past. Relying on the past means I'm going to do what I've done before. But when I rely on the past, I tend to miss the new trends. When I miss new trends, I fall behind, and then I get punished for my mistakes for not catching on to new trends. So I become risk averse, and that leads back to the beginning of the cycle again, where I start to rely on the past. So if the platform that you're on right now is so costly, and the time involved in making upgrades and enhancements to the platform is so excruciatingly long, then it's easy to fall into this risk aversion vicious cycle, which is just a spiral that does not lead to a happy place. The other thing is this revenue share actually creates several disincentives in the system. If I'm a retailer and I have a traditional brick and mortar business, and I also have an online business, well, in order to provide a really seamless omni-channel experience, in addition to product data and inventory data and customer data, I need to have a single view of the order data in my commerce platform, so that operational folks and customers themselves can have that unified view and make smart decisions about fulfillment, returns, etc. Well, if I'm paying on rev share, why would I ever want to move all my brick and mortar order data into my commerce platform and get dinged for that revenue when it wasn't generated through the platform? This is just one example of, I think, a perverse disincentive that creates functional barriers to providing the experience that retailers really are striving for today. The Mozu solution to this cycle is to empower innovation, and really every aspect of the platform is built, and the services are built around providing this innovative experience. One is Mozu platform gets refreshed with new updates once a quarter. So we have releases every quarter to provide timely updates as opportunities present themselves in the market, things change in industry. We can respond very quickly to that, and those upgrades become available to everybody on the platform as soon as they're launched on the platform. In addition, the openness and flexibility of Mozu really allows a retailer to experiment, to try new things, to not feel encumbered and shackled by the platform itself. As fast as the ideas can be generated, they can very quickly be implemented with your own IT staff or a partner on the platform. We've also provided, in addition to the open source SDKs that I mentioned before, that are available for many platforms, Java, PHP, .NET, iOS, Android. In addition to those SDKs, we also provide reference applications. So you've got a starting point you want an in-store mobile app to provide returns or line busting feature we've got that app in the reference application list. You can take that application, all the code there, modify it, change it, and build an experience that's unique to you. So all of these labs, these reference apps are there to make it possible for retailers to move more quickly and innovate more quickly. I touched on before the unlimited sandboxes. Running in our cloud, as many sandboxes and sites as you want to be able to stand up and create. There's no limits around that. And then the usage-based pricing. We've really carefully structured our pricing to make sure that we're not going to create artificial barriers to innovation or any experiences that are needed on the platform, and frankly, fairly charge with a model that aligns very closely to our cost to serve, so that retailers don't feel encumbered in any way in what they want to build on the platform. So I think that carries us through the high-level overview of what the challenges and solutions are we see on the Mozu platform.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jason. That was really a very in-depth and very interesting conversation about running the gamut of commerce solutions. As you mentioned, everything has really changed since the early days of e-commerce, and there's a lot of opportunity in the new marketplace. And now it seems as if the technology, specifically through Mozu, is really equipped to handle the challenges of today and tomorrow. Now, the audience has been very participative as far as entering questions into our system. So just some of the main ones that we've seen, there are a couple of trends, and some of these are related specifically to the Mozu platform. So Jason, if you wouldn't mind, one of the first questions that came up was, in terms of integrations, if Mozu doesn't have an integration to a particular system that's needed, how do I go about integrating that with the Mozu platform?
Okay, yeah, so Mozu has a development portal for developers. We call it Dev Center. And if you have a partner that you rely on for development work, or you've got your own staff for development, or want to use Mozu's professional services organization to development, all of those are available. Basically, you'd sign up for the platform and then get access to the development center. And in there, you'll have full access to the APIs. Actually, you can download the SDKs right now. They're publicly available. And can build whatever integrations you want, and those will only be available within your environment. So you can create a sandbox, get to know the API, plan out the integration, build it as you need and see fit, deploy it just for your own set of sites, test it, deploy it, push it through the certification process to get pushed into the production environment, launch your new site with the integration, and you have full control at that point. So standard sort of development experience is built into this SaaS platform.
Sounds very powerful. And now you'd mentioned sandboxes, and actually we had a question from James that kind of fits along with that. And he said, you speak of sandboxes, but does Mozu allow me to create multiple sites?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some terminology here that we can get grounded on. So inside the Mozu platform, every retailer is created as a tenant, and that tenant can have many sites and product catalogs inside that tenant. And then in the development environment, you can create sandbox tenants, and sandbox are just development tenants that then also have their own site. So certainly in the development environment, you can have as many as you can dream up sites and actually tenants, but also in production you can have multiple sites. So it's a very common use case where I need to provide a branded site like a sitelet or other shopping experience that's a minor deviation from my primary site, my primary market. That use case is very strongly supported in Mozu through shared content, the ability to override product elements at the catalog level or filter catalogs and publish catalogs out to sites. So very strong support for this multi-site experience built natively into Mozu.
Excellent. Thanks for that insight. Now, kind of along the same line, Susan from Irvine, California is mentioning that she has a couple of retail sites that she already has out into the world, and she wants to kind of expand her market and have a site that's dedicated to her wholesalers. Can Mozu handle that setup, and what would that process look like?
Sure. Yeah, that's another area where this multi-site capability, features very strongly. So in a wholesale environment, typically you'd have different pricing, probably restricted access, and the mechanism to manage the different catalogs, if you want to have a wholesale catalog and retail catalog, and then provide a unique shopping experience for those retail sites and the wholesale site, you can override a piece of your product content and then share the rest of it across all those sites, or choose to override all of it. It really is depending on the business need for that wholesale versus resale or multiple retail sites. That'd be an area where you'd probably work with a partner, determine, understand exactly what the requirements are, and then pick the best way to manage all that data for those sites, and then publish out there. But strong use case supported by Mozu.
Excellent. All good information. Well, folks, thank you again so much for joining us for this webinar presentation. If you'd like to learn more, we'd definitely love to speak with you. The Mozu platform is brought to you by Volusion Inc. We're dedicated to providing the best e-commerce solutions, no matter the size of your business. And with Mozu, we're really excited of serving that mid-market and enterprise business. So if you'd like to learn more, visit us at mozu.com, and you can request a demo. One of our services consultants and solutions consultants will reach out to you. You can also give us a call directly at the number listed on your screen. And, of course, we'd love to engage with you on social media. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Mozu Commerce. So, again, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We look forward to speaking further with you. And, of course, if you have any questions, just let us know. We'll be happy to get back to you as quickly as possible.